Hi, this is Jayalakshmi from the financial planning team of iThought. I have with me my colleague Samyukta, who is a certified financial planner in today's episode. October is the World Financial Planning Month. To us, having a financial plan and having a structured approach towards your wealth creation is quite obvious. But there are a lot of people who feel that working with a professional isn't really worth it. So in today's special episode of Kairos, we are going to be looking at some of the necessary questions that one need to ask before choosing a financial planner. So to begin with, let's understand why we need a financial planner. Today, people have access to so much of information, research and financial tools, right? So even with a few clicks, they are able to access the retirement calculators and fund recommendations and so much more. So to address the elephant in the room, what difference does a financial planner make?
This is actually one of my favorite questions to answer because it comes up a lot, especially because I think today there's so much, like you pointed out, information available that people can make their own decisions. Now, let's take an example of somebody who's near their 30s, who's eager to buy a house. They have some money saved up. If they were to go online, they would be able to find the best home loan rates. They would be able to calculate their EMI. And they would be able to figure out what is the minimum down payment that they need to make. Right? You don't need any professional help to get this done. You can do it entirely by yourself. Now, does this person really need a financial planner? That's the basic question, right? Now, we need to look at three things. Okay, so you want to understand how you think about financial planning. Is financial planning only about projections, calculations, and product selection, or is it about something much larger like decision making? The second question you want to think about is, can someone have objective clarity on their financial actions? And the third thing that you want to look at is, when you make financial decisions, can those decisions be made in isolation or do they have a ripple effect? Now, let's go back to the example of this person. If they're nearing 30, they might be married, they might be considering starting a family, and they're looking at buying this house, right? So if you get into this decision of buying a house too early, you are also not only thinking about buying the house, but you're thinking about when you're going to be debt free, whether this EMI is actually affordable. And if you get there too early, what are you compromising on? So making an informed decision, looking at the second order or the ripple effect of that one choice is crucial. Now, over time, behavioral economics has also taught us that people don't act so rationally when it comes to their own money. So, definitely having an objective third party assist you with these kind of decisions is going to add value.
So I think that makes it clear with what value addition one can have working with a professional. And so each financial plan covers certain aspects like, say, tax planning, risk management, investment planning, etc. Right? So it looks like a pretty set process. Doesn't that mean all the financial planners basically do the same thing?
You're partially right, because the concepts of financial planning are the same, but that's only scratching the surface. We need to dig a little deeper to understand why there are differences in financial planning. So again, here there are three questions to ask your financial planner. The first is, what is your approach to financial planning? The second is, what are your qualifications as a financial planner? And the third is, how satisfied are clients after they opt for the service? So coming back to answering these questions, right? The concepts can be the same, but the approaches can be different. So I can give you an example from our own team. Last year, when we were working on the Wise Advice National Case Study Competition, our financial planning team split into two sub-teams and they came up with two separate solutions for the same problem or financial need, right? So one approach was prescriptive, which basically meant that they they took a stance that, okay, this client is aspirational, they want to meet everything on their list, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to achieve those goals. So the plan that was proposed for them was very action oriented. So it said, okay, you want to achieve these things, you need to do ABC things to get there. Then we had the other team come up with a descriptive solution where they said, okay, you want to achieve these things, but there are trade-offs in many scenarios. So they presented, say, if you choose path A, you compromise on this and you get this. If you choose path B, you compromise on something else, but you get this. So when the client has many options in front of them, or if they have a clear action path, it's the same process that has come up with these two results, right? Now, the descriptive solution won the competition, but a prescriptive approach can also work for a different set of people. So that's why the approach matters. Now, moving on to the second point, which is about quality, or rather qualifications. So it's in your best interest to work with a certified financial planner or a qualified professional, because they are held to much higher standards than somebody who is just using the brand of a financial planner. For instance, CFP professionals have to continuously update themselves on industry developments. They adhere to a specific code of conduct and ethics. In general, they are also going through a technical process of getting that qualification, right? So this is how qualification matters. And the last point is basically about client satisfaction. Now, many people think that, okay, planners all do the same thing. Somebody is giving me a plan at 5,000, somebody is giving me a plan at 25,000. Why should I spend that extra 20,000 on another person, right? Now, it is good to be cost conscious, because that is the whole purpose of, following a budget and all of those things. But you also need to understand that value for money doesn't mean the cheapest thing. It is about getting what you deserve. So if you can understand how satisfied clients are with a particular organization or a financial planner, then you know that if they are satisfied, they are getting value for money. Otherwise, they wouldn't go back, and there would be other issues, right?
So I think research and homework are quite crucial. Let's talk more about fees and compensation. Okay. So people who disguise as advisors, they tend to sell investment products, and investors feel cheated about this, and they feel disappointed. So they end up choosing the DIY approach, right? So in the whole process of choosing a financial planner, how to safeguard the interest of investors?
This is actually a pretty interesting point, because if you're a victim of mis-selling, you obviously find out much later, and usually at that point, there's not much that you can do. And you're right, if you feel cheated, you might not want to trust somebody else. But really, in such a situation, there's only one question to ask, which is how is my financial planner or how is my advisor being compensated? Now, broadly speaking, we have a few models in which compensation works. So the first one is a flat fee model, where a fee is charged based on the scope of work. This is what we have for financial planning. The second is a fee-based model, where it's the fee is calculated as a percentage of the assets under advice or the assets under management. And the third is a commission-based model. So a commission-based model means for a particular investment product, the advisor or the person who is sort of guiding you through this process is getting paid a certain amount based on their sale. Now, if you want to avoid any conflicts of interest, the best thing to do is to be upfront and ask the question and understand how much is going as commission, how much is the breakup of the fees basically that would go to your guide. Now, one thing that we do, because we are like fiduciary SEBI registered investment advisors, is to ensure that our plans are free of all product influences. So we don't recommend any specific products. We don't push for anything in the financial plans. But our team is competent enough, and this gives the investor the choice to decide what they want to do in terms of product selection, etc. And if they want to come back for advice, that door is always open and we're happy to help them with that part.
So a quick follow-up on this question. So when do you think this DIY model would actually work, and when one should actually go for professional guidance?
So a DIY model works if you can satisfy or if you feel confident about these three things. So the first is your ability to navigate the markets. The second is to cultivate the right behavior and investment habits. And the third is to dedicate time to your finances. Now, if you feel that over and above whatever responsibilities that you have at work, in your personal life and socially, that you can dedicate time, that you're interested in learning about the markets, you can keep yourself up to date on what's happening and identify opportunities, then by all means, I think a DIY model does suit you. And behavior is obviously the hardest aspect to control in this equation. So that if you feel confident about these things, then definitely a DIY approach works. But if for some reason this doesn't click, then you should definitely look at professional guidance. And here's like a quick checklist for you to get started on that. So first is tap into your network, see if friends or family know an advisor who can help you out. In case you're not comfortable doing that, you can actually, we live in the age of social media, so you can definitely like look up someone online, see what kind of reviews they have, try to understand whether they're like a reputable firm to work with, and then you can see if they have a website, because that should also give you some idea on what kind of services they offer. And the last point is basically look at LinkedIn, because I think that's a great place to find professional connections. And you can search for certified financial planners, you can search for investment advisors, and you will find somebody who crops up. Another alternative is to actually go to FPSB India's website, that's the Financial Planning Standard Board in India, and look for a certified financial planner there, because you can actually find somebody who's in your city to help you out.
That's a very thoughtful approach. But my question is that there are some advisors who we see have the best reviews and recommendations, but yet might not be really suitable for me, right? So why does that discrepancy occur, and how to sort of avoid that?
That's a really good question. I think when you look at reviews, you're basically getting to understand how competent the advisor is and what kind of reputation they have in the market, right? But this is also a personal engagement that you're having with someone. When you choose an advisor, there is a personal element to that. So that depends on intuitive factors like trust and comfort, right? So there are 4 things that you can reflect on when you are trying to identify your investment advisor or financial planner. So the first question is, how comfortable are you disclosing things to them? The second is, are they listening to you, or do you feel like they are talking at you and not paying attention to what you say? The third is, how do they manage confidentiality? And the fourth is, do you view this as a long-term relationship? Do you see potential for this to be a long-term relationship? Now, why this matters is, if you don't feel comfortable with your advisor and you're not able to tell them what's on your mind, whether it's your aspirations or your financial needs, then the outcome that comes from your discussions is not going to be at the level that you want it to be at, right? And similarly, if you don't envision like a long-term partnership with your advisor, then again, you're not going to get the best out of that engagement, because the longer you work with an advisor, the more you can achieve together. And confidentiality basically builds trust. And yeah, I think this is pretty much what you would need to ask.
Yeah, these questions makes a lot of sense. But do you think these are the only reasons that could cause discrepancy?
I think there could be a couple of other reasons as well. So, in terms of finding the right fit, you want to ask a few additional questions. So the first could be along the lines of what is your advisor's focus segment, right? The second could be what is their ideal client. The third is to look at sample plans that they might have. And the fourth is to understand who they've worked with in the past. Now, when you ask these questions, you get a good grasp of what kind of client experience your advisor has had or your financial planner has had, what kind of segment they want to grow into, and whether they've worked with somebody like you or not before. This can help you decide whether you'd be comfortable trusting them with the next step in the process. A sample plan is not always required. It's more of a nice to have. I think if you can get your hands on that, or if it gives you a certain level of comfort, that works. But in most cases, your plan is going to be very different from a sample plan. So you can think about that as well.
So I understand the whole financial process is like a long-term engagement, right? And we see some people don't stick to it throughout the period because the plan doesn't meet their level of expectations. So how do we overcome the disappointments of people who are engaged in the financial planning engagement?
That's a very accurate observation, because you see a lot of people coming into the financial planning space with a certain level of enthusiasm and expectation, and for some reason it fades out over time, and then they're not so keen to come back because they feel like planning hasn't really helped them get to the next level. So to avoid this kind of disappointment, you can basically ask 4 questions to your planner. So the first is, what is the period of engagement? Second is, what kind of support will you receive before, during and after financial planning? The third is, how are the responsibilities divided? And the fourth is, how often will your planner communicate with you, or what is this communication process, right? Most of the disappointment that comes is because at the beginning there's no clear definition of who is responsible for what. So there might be like an unsaid assumption that, oh, my planner will take care of these things, and then you realize that they have not done it, and then you're disappointed that it's not happened. Or you might expect, so in particular what we feel is that the way the planning process works is that there is a lot of work for the planner in the beginning, and then when it comes to the implementation phase, the client becomes equally involved, right? So that part after the plan, that 6 months to 1 year after the plan, is where a lot of the action takes place, and that's when the client needs to be most proactive. So if they're not prepared for that, or if they assume that the work ends as soon as they get the plan, then that's where the disappointment could come. So being upfront, and this is why we work with clients over a year as well, because we know that's when they need the maximum support, and if they don't have that support system at that point, that's bound to cause some level of dissatisfaction or disappointment. And I think when it comes to communication, because people don't really look at this aspect, you need to actually talk to clients more proactively, and that's a process that we follow. So if there's any change in terms of like tax laws, or like this one time earlier this year, what we had done was, when the lending rates came down, we proactively reached out to all of our clients and told them that, oh, you can renegotiate your home loans, and we saved them a lot of money doing that one exercise. So making sure that that communication happens, and that they find out these changes from you and not from someone else, or like the newspaper or somewhere else, really helps. And yeah,
I think these checklists are quite helpful. So thank you so much for the insights. I am quite sure this would be really helpful for people who are looking to, choose a financial planner, or who are debating between being a DIY, giving a DIY approach and going for a professional approach. Thank you for listening to us. If you'd like to work with us, do get in touch with us. The contact details are in the description box below. Thank you.
Thank you.